To all who come to this happy place, welcome.
So we are here live. We're in the Norwegian pavilion next to the Frozen ride, I think. And I'm unbelievably grateful and honored to have, for my 100th guest on the show, Lou Mongello. Hello, Lou. How are you doing today?
Dude, let me tell you something. I am so incredibly honored to be here. I don't mean here in Frozen Land. I mean here with you for your 100th episode. It is a huge, huge accomplishment. You should be very proud.
I am unbelievably very happy to be able to do this, and obviously, guys, it's thanks to the magic cheers that you guys who are listening. It's because of you that I'm able to do this, and I'm so grateful that you guys have helped me get to the 100th episode. So I was given the opportunity to come over here and visit the Food and Wine Festival, so that's where I'm at now. And what better person to talk with than Lou Mongello? So unbelievably excited. But before we get started, Lou, just kind of give you a recap of the podcast. What we do is we focus on people's stories and passions and them pursuing those passions, but of course who have that love of Disney. And I think you passed pretty much all of those tests, starting with the fact that you have your own podcast. You have, of course, your own mentorship as well, which I was a part of, and it was a great honor to be a part of that. It helped me out so much in my own podcast. And now you also have a new venture starting up, the way you're doing it now at least, which is in October. So you're doing quite a bit of things, but just if you could give a brief background, as if people don't know who you are, but if you can give a brief background, a little bit of, who Lou Mongello is.
Who is Lou Mongello? I ask myself that question all the time. Sort of Reader's Digest condensed version. Back in 2003, I was a lawyer in New Jersey. Don't hold either of those things against me. I always had a love of Disney. I had this idea that I wanted to make something once and sell it over and over again because I was always in the service business. I had the idea for a book. All I knew about was Disney, so the challenge was, can I write a book and can I get it published? I found a publisher. My first book came out in 2004. I started a little website. It turned into articles and a community, and I started podcasting in 2005. And very much accidentally, my hobby, this thing that I just love doing on the side, started to turn into a business. And long story longer, at one point I says, I'm gonna take this leap of faith. I was out of the practice. I had a great job as an IT manager for a medical company. I left that job. I sold my house. I sold what I had, and I drove down to Florida to sort of pursue this dream of doing what I love every day. And fast forward to now, I've been podcasting for 11, 12 years, something around that, and I've got books and products and a community built around my love of Disney, but I've also been able to expand, and I love being able to help people sort of get from where they are to where they want to be, because I know what that journey feels like. I know what the struggles feels like. So getting to work with amazing entrepreneurs like yourself, either in mastermind groups or events, is something I love doing, and it's incredibly rewarding too.
And I think that's what's most interesting, because that was the Reader Digest version.
And it was really long, so
we're gonna but we're gonna get a little deeper, because that's the thing that I think we all relate to. But what I want to talk about at that moment for you is what it felt like when it became that leap of faith moment. Like, how did that feel, taking that chance of literally selling your possessions? Like, that's a really big thing to do. So it not only you're selling your possessions, it basically means you're not going to have them anymore, meaning that if this doesn't work out, you're like starting from scratch again. So what was that like? Like, what were your feelings, going through that? What was your mindset like?
An entrepreneur who does something like that and doesn't tell you that it's the scariest thing in the world is lying, because it was. And when I say that it's a leap of faith, it truly is a leap of faith. And for me, man, it came down to two words, which is what if. And it came down to a fear that had I not done something to try and pursue this thing that I really believed in, I was afraid that 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road, I go, what if, man? Like, what if I would have tried it? I wonder what would have happened if I would have done it, if I would have moved to Florida, if I would have tried to make this a business. So instead I turned it around and I said, what if? Like, what if I get down there and I could make this work? What if I can turn this into a business? And that was incredibly empowering. Now, that being said, the day that I quit my job and I went downstairs in my pajamas and sat in front of my computer on Monday morning, I was like, oh my Mongello, what did you just do? I had a young child. I had mortgage payments. And it took a couple of days to get over that. I'm like, well, maybe if I just go back tomorrow and pretend I really didn't quit, they'll take me back. But after you get that over that initial shock, it's incredibly exciting. It's incredibly empowering. It's always a scary journey, I think, as an entrepreneur, because you've got to steer the ship. It was the best thing. It was the scariest and the best thing I ever did.
Did you have a job by any chance when you came down here? Did you go apply at the local Disney store by any chance?
I didn't. So I think when you take a leap of faith, I think you take that leap but have a little bit of a parachute. And for me, I said, okay, if I go down to Florida and I don't make $1 for the next 6, 8, 12 months, can my kids still eat most days out of the week? A support system around you, whether it's a spouse, parents, family, whatever, is incredibly important. I had that. My wife went out and got a job, and we got health benefits. So that gave me a little bit of cushion. But I will tell you, man, and I still feel the same way, that if everything disappeared tomorrow and I had to go work at X retail store or Denny's or whatever, and not to take anything away from people that work at Denny's, but I would do whatever. Look, people say, what do you do for a living? And I say, whatever it takes. And I will do whatever it takes to make sure my family can eat. Fortunately, it hasn't come to that yet. But yeah, I was prepared, and still I'm always prepared to do what I need to do to make sure that, I can still keep the ship afloat.
I think that is the hardest thing that we feel, regardless of what passion or dream we have. It could be something big, like starting your own business, or it could be something, in the eyes of others, something small, like, changing your eating habits, going to exercise more, whatever it is. But for some reason, once we're willing to take that step, it seems like the hardest step that we're ever going to have to take. And unfortunately, that step is what ends up kind of doing us in. We get scared and we back away and we don't take that plunge. And unfortunately, we end up with those what ifs. And so that's why I wanted to ask as far as that goes, because I know, people you always hear of the people who are already at the level that you want to be at. And when you hear their stories, you think, well, they had it different than I did. I'm not. And so that's why I do this podcast, because I want people to know that Lou Mongello, who might seem like everything is perfect, at one time was in the same position that you were in. He had the same fears, he had the same feelings and frustrations that you had when he was about to start this. I mean, he had a child he had to support, he had a wife he had to support, and I don't know if you guys are married, but convincing your wife to let you sell everything that you own and go try to make it, not even a guarantee, but try to make it in a whole different state based on a fictional Mickey Mouse character, it's not an easy sell. So it's one of those things where when you hear something like this, you should get encouraged to know that you're not the only one who has felt that way, and people have made it in much harder situations that even you're facing now. So you should take courage in that. Now, going back to what we're doing, Lou, as far as being that you are I would say you're a podcaster first. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Being that you're a podcaster first, what has been kind of the main drive and the main kind of thing that gets you up in the morning to know that you're going to be doing a podcast that day? What excites you about it?
So, the podcast is the core of what I do, but I think maybe even deeper than that in the nucleus is the community. So what gets me up, what gets me going, what gets me excited, what gets me fired up, what keeps me up late at night, is the community of people that you build around that thing, whether it's a blog, a podcast, your video show, your book, whatever it might be. I've always called, and I still consider anybody who listens, they're not listeners, they're certainly not fans, I don't like that word, but they're friends, and I love being able to create something that I hope that they enjoy, and that, if it brings them a little bit of happiness each and every day, that's a good thing. And whether it's through the podcast or the videos or whatever way that we create the content, the heart of what I do is the community around it.
And I think that's also really key, because that's how I feel too. I think we kind of go into this idea that if you're not, curing cancer or saving, a burning baby, not a burning baby, you failed if that's what you're trying to do, trying to save a baby from a burning building, that, you're not achieving anything. And everybody has their own gifts, everybody has their own talents, and I'm on the same boat with Lou, where one thing I love about doing the podcast is being able to interact with you guys, being able to talk with you, knowing that, an episode that you heard helped you in whatever situation you're going, like that excites me, that gets me going. So I'm glad that, Lou, you're saying all that, because to me that just shows how deep, it runs when it comes to doing this. And I thought I was weird for feeling that way.
and you know what? And if you haven't felt it yet, I promise you that you will, especially when you're a content creator, blogger, podcaster, video, we're pushing out content, right? Unless we're doing it live, we don't necessarily get that immediate feedback.
Yeah.
But you probably don't realize the effect and impact, and probably for you especially, a positive impact that you have on people's lives. And you're going to start getting those emails, if you haven't already, saying, you know what, Joe, I was listening to the show and I was just having a crummy day, and you know what, you made me happy, right? I heard the music of World Showcase in the background, and it just sort of took me away from my bad day or my bad boss or whatever that is. And I think that's at the heart of what we both do, right? Whether we're talking about Disney or entrepreneurship or Saved by the Bell, for me, I do a show that I hope makes people happy, right? And that's what you do, right? You're doing something to have a positive impact, and you probably don't know the ripple effect that you have with every single, with things like this that you put out.
I hope so. You guys email me. No. But yeah, so, and that's exactly what I'm hoping. That's exactly what I love. And it's funny because on a previous episode, I remember I was speaking to somebody and we mentioned that. We were mentioning how for some reason the positive people and the people that we're touching are seems to be like the most shy ones. And unfortunately, we get like those haters that come out that'll be the ones who are more vocal. But, in the end, so the way I see it, whether you're hating or not, I'm glad you heard. I'm glad you listened, and maybe not today, maybe it didn't take effect for you today, but hopefully in the future it'll take effect for you. So either way, I'm glad that you took the time out to listen.
Can I say something about the haters?
Yeah.
Right? Because
this guy is doing a YouTube video live video with Disney, and he's talking and I just thought this is ridiculous. He can't really expect to be making, a difference here. And lo and behold, I'm probably now one of Lou's biggest fans. So I would agree.
You're not a fan, right?
So I would agree. Sometimes the haters are the ones who end up being the ones who are really the most, who are going to come out the most. So it wasn't so much that I was a hater. It's not like I was putting bad comments, but I just didn't get it. And then all of a sudden it clicked, and I was like, well, this is the same guy. And then, yeah, now here I am with the privilege of being able to I'm glad I didn't comment. I'm glad you.
Now I got to go back and read all my YouTube comments just to see what you might have said.
Now, speaking of that, though, can you talk about one of the toughest moments maybe that you had to go through dealing with your podcast and stuff? Whether it was something mechanical or whether it was something that really affected you more in a way is this worth it? But just kind of get into that. Unfortunately, but that happens in life. But kind of that lower end of owning a podcast the way you're doing it.
Yeah, man, and I think that's really important. And that's something that I think is not talked about a lot. You go to conferences and everybody's excited, and you hear all the success stories. The event that I'm doing, I'm not trying to shamelessly plug, but one of the things we're going to talk about is the low points. Somebody who could come in and speak she calls it sort of the unsexy side of being an entrepreneur, because you need to know when you're feeling down and money's not coming in and you're sitting there at 2 o'clock in the morning going, what am I doing? Is this really worth it? It is, and you're not alone. And it's what we can look. I continue to go through that. I was up until 3:30 last night. That's why I look the way I do. I was up till 3:30 last night because I had to get stuff done. But there's always fear. There's always second guessing, and it's important, I think, that people know that. However successful, and I put that in air quotes, however you perceive or define success is, those people go through it too. All right, I go through it every day. I worry every day, about the content I'm going to create and what I'm going to be doing that's new and different, and making sure the bills get paid every month. And it's important that people realize that a lot of sometimes what you see on the front-facing side, you don't necessarily see the back end, right? So I talk about it as a tree. You see a tree with all the flowers. You see a flower with all the beauty and the bloom. What you don't see is the dirt underneath. And you don't see the bad winters when the tree almost died and those roots that are sort of gnarling their way around. They hit an obstacle like a rock and they've got to go around it. And it's a weird sort of analogy, but that's what I think about is we as entrepreneurs, we see other entrepreneurs or people who we think are successful, and we see that tree as the flower, and you don't sort of realize what went into it sort of backstage, to use a Disneyism. And it's really important that people know, especially when you start to go through it yourself and you feel like giving up. And I will tell you, man, there's been plenty of times I'm like, what am I doing? this is not working, or I'm not generating enough money, or the bills are starting to pile up. For me, that fear sort of fuels my fire a little bit. That's sort of what gets me going and makes you work a little bit harder. But you are not alone, and I get that it's scary, and that's why shows like yours and talking and working with other people that are in a similar situation as you is very helpful.
Yeah, that's one of the best analogies I've ever heard, though, actually. That's a really good analogy as far as a tree being able to understand that what makes a tree be what it is actually all of that dirt and all of that, tanglement that happened with the roots and everything. That's what made it who it was. And that is really good to hear because, for somebody like me and for other people, when we get those moments, that's something we can remember as far as this moment is going to make us stronger. This moment's going to provide a stronger root. This moment's going to help us to be able to, hang on a little longer. And so, yeah, that's a very good point. Now, what has been then one of the most rewarding, I know you were mentioning the community, so, I understand that, but maybe more, I guess, on a personal level, but I'm not saying, tell us your bank account, your bank account numbers. I mean more like on a personal level for you. What has been one of the most rewarding things?
Right, so you're right. The answer I was going to give, because it's the truth, is the personal connections, the friendships that I've made, the closest friends that I have now, the people that I consider part of my extended family, have been as a direct result of this pursuit of this passion for Disney. On the home front, I try and explain to my kids all the time, because I work for myself, because I'm able to set my own hours, I see my kids every morning before they're off to school. I pick them up every day from school. I'm at all their activities. We have dinner together every single night. I don't schedule things during dinner, barring, exceptional circumstances. We get to do a lot together. And I say, no, if I was a lawyer, you would never see me. I'd be in the office till 7 o'clock. I'd get home. I'd be miserable. I'd be working on Saturdays and sometimes having to go in the office on Sundays. For me, success is not measured in terms of dollars and cents. It's measured in levels of happiness. Mm-hmm. So being able to have the relationships with my friends, be able to have the relationship that I have with my family, and again, by my definition of success, that really has been the greatest reward out of all this.
That was worth taking the risk that you took, getting that freedom. Now, what would you suggest then to somebody maybe who's on that verge? They want to take a leap. They want to, take that next step, but they're on that little scared part. What would be something that you would tell them to encourage them to take that leap?
Well, first, that it's okay to feel that way. If you're not feeling scared at this point, then you're probably not in the right place. Right. If you're feeling scared, you're going. I think you're going down the right path. Again, it goes back to taking that leap of faith, however large or small. Look, I'm not telling you to quit your job tomorrow, unless that's the right time for you, but taking a leap of faith, but having that parachute, saying, start taking those little steps that you're most scared of, right? I'm not saying quit your job tomorrow and then figuring out how it's going to work out, but start to do those things. Think about if a year from now, if you haven't moved the needle at all, how much regret you're going to have. And if you think how you're going to feel then, think about it in 5 years, 10 years, and then you go, oh, well, now it's too late. It's not too late. I don't care if you're 15 or 30 or 50. It is never too late, but you need to start right now. Start making affirmative, positive steps and real change. And it's okay to be, a little or sometimes a lot scared.
As long as you're breathing, take a chance. Now, we're going to get into the part of the podcast that usually, it's a Disney power round. That's what it is. So I'm going to ask you some questions. I think you're able to answer them. I think you have.
Now I'm nervous. That was easy, but now I'm nervous.
I think it's nothing too difficult. It's all personal opinion, but I think everybody should listen to what you got to say compared to some of the other people. But starting off though, what would be your tip? Oh no, let's do it this way. What is your favorite park, and what is one thing you love about it?
So the reason why it's my favorite park is because it's the thing that I love about it. I'm old school. I'm classic Disney. Magic Kingdom to me, there still is something special about that place. When you walk through that portal under the train track and you hear that music and you turn the corner and you get that reveal of the castle, man, I don't care how many times you see it or how old you are, there's still something incredibly special about that place that I think brings out the child in all of us.
What would be your tip for that first-time Disney goer?
I think you need to take your time, especially now. People are worried about so much about cramming it all in, right? Fast passes and magic bands and run, and you're running here and running there. There's so much to take in, but you really do need to take your time and slow down and pay attention to the details and what you see and in what you hear. Yes, for me, and what you taste, because there's so many layers to this wonderful onion that is Walt Disney World, and I think sometimes you miss it if you try and go too quickly.
Now, what about for that person who goes multiple times? I think you can answer that pretty well.
So for me, food is an attraction. Well, I live here now, right? So I live, very, very close to Walt Disney World. I've been here hundreds, if not thousands of times. The thing that's wonderful about this place is no matter how often you come, there's always something that's new. There's always something else to explore. There's a new way of looking at things. And I still sort of come here with a child's eye. I still sort of get excited, not just when they open the buffet, but just when they get excited, coming to the parks. So yeah, I think I think so many people, you say, you tell me to do a Disney podcast, like, Disney, come on, man, that's for kids and Cinderella and dumb. But there's, even as an adult, there's so much here that you can do and appreciate, and I think there's no other place in the world that allows you to be a kid the way this place does.
I agree with that 100%. Now, being that, I wish I could basically just have you on every show. Can't have that happen though, obviously. And it's that time to sign off. But I definitely, and you kind of hit on some stuff earlier already, but I definitely want to give you some time of what you would like to tell the listeners. Again, it's the way I always say it is, maybe it's some wisdom that you wish you knew when you were about to start. Whether that's going to be, something that's, like a stat that you wish you had known, like, get this much money saved up. Or maybe it's more personal, like, don't be afraid and take that leap of faith. But what would be some advice that you would give our listeners to sign off now? Kind of a farewell advice here.
I think so many of us, Joe, we're waiting for the right time, right? Well, it's not the right time for me to start this. It's not the right time for me to take a leap of faith. There's always going to be a reason. There's always going to be an excuse why you can't. You've got to find all those reasons why you couldn't. For me, it goes back to those two words. It goes back to the what if, the fear of looking back with regret that I didn't do it. Let that be a motivator for you. If there's something that you really want to do, say, what if 10 years go by and I don't try it? You're always going to look back and say, man, and life is too short, not to get overly, to be a downer, but it could be over tomorrow, man. You just don't know when it's going to happen. And I think with taking a risk is where the greatest reward comes. When you have to work harder at something, it tastes better, right? The reward just tastes better when you really have to earn it. And whether it's you launch that first episode of a podcast or you get that first email saying, hey, Joe, man, I love the show. You think back about it, yeah, man, I edited that show for hours. I was up till 2 o'clock in the morning and I couldn't get the feed to work. And it's much more satisfying. And I think that when you do start going down that path of doing what feels right, that there's no greater feeling in the world. And I know it's so cliched, but if you do what you truly love and you do it passionately and persistently and with patience, the money will come.
I love that. Thank you. Yes, I agree 100% with that as well. Now, where could people, and we're going to still do a little bit more talking here, Lou, but where could people reach out to you? Where's the best place for them to find Lou Mongello?
Probably at a restaurant in Disney. Oh, you mean online? I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I was going to say you can find me in Japan eating somewhere. So all of the Disney stuff that I do is at wdwradio.com. And my personal site is loumongello.com, and I am at Lou Mongello on all the social.
All right, so I did want to give some time here to talk about two different things. So, like I mentioned earlier, I personally was a part of the Mastermind group that Lou offers, and it's funny because the story goes, I've taken classes for YouTube and how to do this. I've taken classes on this and that and all that kind of stuff, and I just thought, you know what, I nothing was working for me. Nothing I felt like was really getting to where I needed. So I started doing podcasting. And I knew I needed some kind of guidance. I knew, having a mastermind is so important because being able to talk with people who already are in the space and who've already gone through things that you potentially are going to go through is extremely beneficial. And so I knew I needed that. And so I was looking at a couple of different people, and like I said, I had become a friend now of Lou Mongello, not a fan, a friend. And I just so happened to have done a search, and I think that's what it was with the search, and I found that you had your own personal site. And on that site is where I found out about the Hub Mastermind Group. And it completely changed the podcast. The podcast that you hear today, guys, is because of the Hub Mastermind Group. If you go to my first episode, which I don't really number anymore just because this is, from what I started now, what I'm doing now, that's what I consider my real podcast. But if you go to my first episode, you'll hear it is completely different. It is, and not to say there's anything wrong. I mean, Lou has a podcast like this. Nothing wrong with it. But it was basically doing the whole, I want to talk about Disney and this is what's happening. But it just didn't feel good for me. Thanks to taking the time and going into the class, I was able to learn so much. And not just that, but really find my own voice. And I really give all of that kind of, recognition to that Hub Mastermind, because being able to hear other people and other entrepreneurs, struggling with things that I was struggling with, and sharing ideas helped me get to a next level. So I do want to talk about that as far as, letting people know when that opens up again, if that's something you're doing. And then the second thing is what you just started doing in October, which one of the classes already sold out, which is incredible. So sorry for that, guys. But hopefully by the time you're hearing this, hopefully the other one is not sold out yet, that maybe you can get your own ticket and come meet Lou. Not to meet Lou in the sense of just to get an autograph or something, but to actually meet Lou and actually get something of value for your own personal, passion or dream that you're trying to pursue. But if you can just, talk about those two, Lou, as far as when you're going to be doing that again.
So first thing I need to do is I have to tell you that you're wrong.
Okay.
And as much as I appreciate your kind words about the group, you did this. You built this. You put the work in. You put the effort in. You stayed up late. You got up early. You took this idea and pursued it and refined it and worked it. So, man, I applaud you, because there's a huge nexus between all these people that have the idea. I'm going to do this. I'm going to start this. I'm going to write this. I'm going to do this book. And then the people that actually execute on it. And then when the bad times do start happening, and man, admit it, like there were weeks that you're like, why am I doing this? Like, you feel like you want to quit. That's where so much of the drop-off happens, right? So many people quit as soon as things get rough and they're like, I'm just going to go back to my job. Like, you didn't do that, man. You quit and you hustled and you struggled and you worked. So this very much is all you. And look, you were as much of a contributor to the group as you were a recipient of help. And that's the beauty of the mastermind, is when you find like-minded entrepreneurs that are not just there to listen, but to give guidance in return, to have that accountability, every week. Yeah. When you got to show up and deliver on that goal you talked about the week before, or say, hey, this is what I'm struggling with, or hey, you know what, man, I had a bad week. My kids were being jerks, and my wife, and I got nothing done. It's okay, because we've all been there. That accountability really helps, because it's very much as easy as an entrepreneur to say you're going to do something on a to-do list by Monday, and then if you don't do it, man, nobody cares. Yeah. Having the group there, and you got to show up and deliver is incredibly powerful. So I am very grateful, as I know the other people in the group are, to the fact that you were there and the insight that you brought, because it's one thing to get feedback from one person, it's another to get it from 5, 6, 7 that all sort of want to help each other out. So the mastermind group right now, there's the one that I have currently is filled. I keep them really small, as you know. Mm-hmm. For me, a mastermind can't be more than 5, 6, 7 people, because you don't want to get lost, right? You want to have enough time, right? Everybody had enough time to, whether it was 10 minutes or a half hour, to talk about themselves each week. If you do a group of 20 or 30, you just can't deliver the same way. I can't. So there's no group that's open right now, but there is going to be one that opens probably at the first of the year. And then something else I started doing too, and I'll just quickly touch on it because you can go read about it, is I love going to conferences, but I would go to a conference and you get all jazzed up and you're like, and I got to decide between which presentation I'm going to go to, and you pick one and you have a thing full of notes and you're like, yeah, I'm all excited, and then you get on the plane, you get home, and you don't do anything, right? Because you got to handle your job, you got to catch up what you missed, the kids need you, your wife needs you, your job needs you. And I still have notebooks from conferences I went to 10 years ago that I never executed on. So in the past, I've done one-day mastermind workshops where we don't just talk about it, but I actually have like web developers and marketing people and graphic designers and Facebook ad people in the room so that as we start talking about what it is that you need or want to do, we execute on it right there. You make changes to your website, you have a new logo, you've got a Facebook ad built, you're starting a podcast. And then I built on that a day before where I have a very small event called the Momentum Workshop Weekend where it's very small, there's only going to be 50 people in the room. But other than a traditional conference, there's only one presenter at a time. And it's not just them sort of spewing out information, it very much is a workshop environment. So there's going to be conversations and a workbook that everybody gets so we can really start to execute on those things. I want it to be a turning point. I'm able to look at it and say, yeah, I went to that event and it really was a turning point for me. And then people have access to the group on Facebook. So even after you get home, you still have some of that accountability as well.
Yeah, I think that's very key as far as that small group, like you were saying. Being able to know that you're going to be heard by the person who's instructing is a huge deal, and then being able to now also talk with these people on a more personal level, because I've been in those groups that is 20 or 30 people, and you don't talk, you don't create relationships. But I know that I'm at least Facebook friends with everybody who was in that group. And I'm able to reach out to them and say, hey, what's going on or how you do, and find out still what's going on with their business or what's going on with what they're doing. And so that small group is really a big benefit. I know many people might think small is not good, but in this case, it's extremely good because, like you were saying, Lou, you're able to get that one-on-one attention. And then the other thing that I liked is the people that you got in the group, you kind of, at least with me, unless you didn't trust me, but you kind of did a kind of a pre-call to kind of find out, about them. And that was a really big help, because the other thing that has happened in the past in my situation going to conferences and stuff is, we have a bunch of beginners, and then unfortunately everybody's lead. It's like the blind leading the blind. You know what I mean? We're all trying to talk, but we don't know anything. But being able that talk to people, say, look, where are you at in what you're trying to do? Maybe you're not at the level that you should be at. That's okay. Try these other things first and then come into the group. So it's not like you're looking for a quick buck. It's not like you're trying to just tell people, okay, if you come to my mastermind, you're going to be a billion download podcast. No, it was very sincere in saying, look, I want to make sure that you coming in here is the right thing for you at this time, which is huge, because as you know, if you go on Facebook, there is just ad after ad of, let me tell you how to do million downloads. Let me tell you how to do million YouTube. Let me tell you how to, and it's just like, okay, well, but then you go to their site and they have like 0 subscribers. I'm like, okay. So, that's what I'm talking, guys, as far as if you're, and that's the beauty of it. It's not just podcasters. I remember in our group, we had a comic book store owner. We had another guy who was doing a website, Powwow website, which was incredible already. I was amazed with what he was doing there. But we had a travel agent. I mean, it's all kinds of different areas, and Lou is able to help in those situations. One, because he has lawyer knowledge, but also because he's actually done this stuff himself. So I just wanted to bring that out. Of course, all that stuff will be in the show notes. So be sure to reach out to Lou, connect with Lou, say hello to Lou, let him know you heard him on the podcast, let him know that you're a fan of him. I know earlier today, Lou, I was doing some periscoping, and I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but she met you in New Orleans. When you went down there in New Orleans, she told me to say hi to you, so I'm just doing it here on the podcast. So yeah, be sure to reach out to him. And of course, you can listen to WDW Radio podcast, because it's totally great, and it'll help you with your Disney Blues. So thank you so much for joining me today, Lou.
Thank you, brother. I am so grateful to you. I am so proud of you. I am happy for you, and I am honored that you've allowed me to be part of your journey.
The honor is mine very much. Thank you so much for joining me today, Lou, and thank you guys for listening, and as always, stay magical.
To all who come to this happy place, welcome.